wang on quite a lot in this video about this car's styling, about the historical significance of it, about why Ferrari built this car, blah, blah, blah. So it's easy to forget that when you boil it down, what we have here is a mid-engined V12, naturally aspirated, with no hybrid assistance. In many ways, it's an analog LaFerrari, which is a very enticing proposition indeed. But let's not dwell on that too much, because that is a throttle pedal and that is a quiet country road. Well, it's not going to be quiet for long, is it? Woo! Oh, man! The engine is the 812 Superfast's magnificent naturally aspirated 6.5 litre V12, but uncorked a fraction more with upgraded internals like titanium com rods for 828 brake horsepower. That makes this the most powerful engine Ferrari has ever fitted to a road car. It also revs to a screaming 9,500 RPM, the same red line as the 812 Competizione. In many ways, in its all-carbon construction, in the way that these seats are attached directly to the carbon tub, this car shares DNA with the LaFerrari. What it doesn't share is the LaFerrari's hybrid system, its E-assisted knockout punch. But honestly, 0 to 62 in 2.85 seconds and a 211 mile an hour top speed isn't exactly shabby, is it? Now, the power and performance figures I just mentioned for this car are pretty much identical to those you get on the much cheaper V6 hybrid 296 GTB, but honestly, I couldn't care. I've got twice as many cylinders, I'm not missing any E-motors here, and every time I put my foot down, I get that noise. Let's see if we can get 9.5, come on. Oh, that is... It's just one of the best noises in the world, isn't it? The gearbox is a 7-speed twin-clutch auto. A manual, apparently, would have been a nostalgic step too far. The whole thing weighs 1,485 kilograms dry, just a few kilograms more than a 296 GTB. There's 230 kilograms of downforce at 124 miles an hour, and it features the latest version of Ferrari's side slip control software that lets mere mortals drift like the gods. Yeah, not sure I'm going to be hanging the tail out today on these slightly narrow, slightly moist Belgian back roads, because this car costs 2 million quid. They're only building 599 of them, they're all sold out. This is an actual customer's car, and I prefer my bed without a horse's head in it. The good news is you don't need to be on some sort of hot quali lap to really enjoy driving this car. Yes, it is impossibly low and impossibly wide. It feels massive on the road. When I look in my mirrors, and I love the positioning of the mirrors out there on the wings, by the way, less distance for your eyes to flick between. The mirror is just full of that rear wheel arch. You're always conscious that the rear of the car is wider than the front. And then you get to the seats. There's only one seating position. It's reclined. They want to give you racy vibes in here, but honestly I thought it was going to be racier and noisier and harsher in here, but actually whack it into wet, sport or race, click this for bumpy road mode, and you could cover big distances in this car. It's also got that little bit of Ferrari magic where it manages to make 800 horsepower feel almost friendly, definitely approachable, like the chassis and the electronics are always on top of whatever monumental power that engine can produce, and then in turn it makes the driver, little old me, feel more confident, like a better driver than he actually is. I genuinely feel I have every confidence that this car isn't going to bite me, it's not going to spit me into that hedge, unless of course I turn everything off and prod it with the stick. Okay, so let's just pick apart this driving experience a little bit more, and we'll start with the steering. Now, Ferraris are famous for having whip-crack fast steering, but also a super light feel to the rack, which I personally happen to like. I know others don't, but this is a little bit different. It's still a very, very fast ratio, and if you breathe on it from off-center, the front end of the car just darts where you want to go. I love it. It feels connected, it feels responsive, it feels exactly how a car that's trying to emulate sports prototypes from the 60s should. But what they've also done is added in a little bit of extra weight, a bit of extra heft, so you get some of that true 60s race car flavour. The brakes, well, they're phenomenal. I'll be honest, I'm not getting anywhere near their limits on this road here. They are there, they do their job fantastically. And then we get to the throttle response as the rain starts beating down on the windscreen, because it's easy to forget when you're driving turbocharged engines all the time just how magical the throttle response on a naturally aspirated engine is. It's right there whenever you want it. And what's fantastic about this engine is from, what, 3,000 RPM all the way to 9,500 RPM, you have this incredible linear rush of acceleration. The sensation is that you've got as much acceleration as you could ever need at all times. It really is very, very special. Now, you might have to be very high up in Ferrari's little black book to be invited to spend 2 million quid on one of these cars, but I'm telling you what, it's not a members only driving experience. It invites you in. Everyone's invited. It wants to have a play. In no way does this car feel hardcore and overly specialist or aloof. It's just right. On the inside, like the 296 GTB, you get a supersized instrument cluster and then touch-sensitive controls for the aircon on the lower part of the dash, and more touchpads on the wheel, which I kept brushing every time we turned into a corner, but I'll forgive on this occasion because this car's purpose is to offer a pure hit of nostalgia. And the gearbox controls, designed to look like a miniature open gate manual, the wraparound windscreen, the reclined seating position and high shoulder line, do just that. Now, funnily enough, I've never raced a Ferrari sports prototype from the 60s, but I'm assured by someone that has that the overall driving position and feeling of enclosure isn't far off. And then we arrived at Spa, one of the world's fastest and most notorious racetracks, especially the original 14-kilometre long street circuit. It was, and still is, a mecca for endurance racing, the scene of countless Ferrari wins, and remains one of the ultimate tests of a driver's nerve and a car's ability. The perfect place, in other words, to take the Daytona SP3 to the ragged edge. Yeah, about that. Unfortunately, and I quote from Ferrari's instructions to me for this event, because of the car's value and the fact that it's a limited edition model, speeds at Spa are limited to 70 kilometers an hour. God, this is frustrating. I'm in one of the world's most exciting cars on one of the world's fastest tracks, and I am unable, I'm not allowed to drive it as the engineers intended. Still, at least I can tell my friends I drove a Ferrari Daytona SP3 through Eau Rouge without lifting. Technically true. So why are we here then? You see, Ferrari claims it doesn't do retro. You're not going to see any straight resurrections from it like the new Lamborghini Countach, but it does like to talk about its history quite a lot, which is why it introduced the Icona range, and this is the third model in the Icona range, hence the SP3 name. The first two were the rather silly windscreenless Monza SP1 and SP2, but this pays homage to the sports prototype racers from the 60s. Confusingly, the name isn't a nod to the Sharky front-engine GT from the 60s, aka the 365 GTB4, but a tribute to Ferrari's famous 1-2-3 finish in the 1967 24 Hours of Daytona, where all three cars, a 330P3/4, 330P4 and a 412P, crossed the line in choreographed unison to rub Ford's nose in it on its home turf. Sweet, sweet revenge for the rout the GT40 had dished out to the Ferraris 6 months earlier at Le Mans. The styling is a melting pot of references from not just one car, but many. Those bulging front wings have a bit of the 512S and 712 Can-Am racers about them. The wing mirrors have been moved from the doors to the front wings in classic endurance racer style, while the slotted rear end is an unexpected nod to Pininfarina's 1968 Ferrari 250 P5 concept car. Yeah, they don't make concepts like that anymore, do they? Put all that in a pot, and this is what you end up with. So let's have a little look around this and appreciate some of the details. And we start here with my personal favourite, which is the headlights that have eyelids that retract when you put the main beams on. Now we'll get a cutaway shot of it so you can appreciate it in all its glory, but that is a nod to the pop-up headlights from supercars around in the 70s and 80s. Lovely touch. Now we come down here, the front wheel arch, the way, when you look at the car from the dead front on angle, the way these crest and rise right over the front wheel, that is probably the most obvious nod to the endurance racers from the 60s. And perched atop that arch is the wing mirrors. So they've moved from the door to these front arches. I think it works beautifully actually, looks right. And then you get to the door. Now this is very interesting because the intake for the rear mounted radiator is actually in the top front of the door here. So you have a tunnel running right through the door and into the radiator, and what you end up with is this really clean side profile here, this pinched waist, where you would normally have a gaping hole in most modern supercars. It's actually probably the most distinctive thing about the surface of this car. Now, it does have a removable roof, a carbon fibre removable Targa roof, so I'm going to open up these butterfly doors, give you a look at those. Oh, very nice. And I'm going to need my glamorous assistant for this. Mark, right, we need to figure out how to get this roof off. You might want to speed this bit up and put some Charlie Chaplin music over the top because this could take a while. There we go. Now, there's nowhere to put it in the front, there's nowhere to put it in the back of the car. So Mark, do you think you can manage it? There we go, lob it in the hire car. And shut your door, please, mate. Good man. Right, now, with the roof off, not only can you see all the mess that I've made inside the cabin today, but also you get to appreciate something else, which is this wraparound windscreen. So the way it wraps around you, and actually this straight line cutoff of the top of the windscreen, that again is a very distinctive feature that you'll see when we throw in some historic pictures of the racers we're talking about. All right, keep coming down the side of the car, more intakes here. I love this central spine that runs right down the middle of the car, and there is your V12, 6.5 litre V12 on full display for everyone to see it. Now this car actually doesn't have any active aerodynamics, so it's just got a full width spoiler here, but really it's little more than just a lip in the bodywork that lifts the rear end of the car. And then you've got the slats, which initially I wasn't sure about, but now I think they absolutely make the design of the car. And then you've got these two enormous exhaust pipes, and they've lifted them up above the number plate, above the diffuser. And the reason for that is you can just have this much bigger, much deeper twin level diffuser under there, providing all the downforce. The big question is, do I like it? Well, I'll be honest. The first time we saw pictures of this car, yeah, I thought it was too fussy. It didn't grab me initially, but I have to say, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, that when you're here, seeing it in the flesh, spending time with it, I still think it's overstyled. I still think they've tried to cram too many styling elements onto one canvas. But when you're standing next to it, when you're driving around the paddock here at Spa with everyone filming it on their phones and giving you the thumbs up and shouting and hollering, you realise that it's got some presence, this car. It's all drama. Marmite styling and draconian speed limits aside, to even get the opportunity to drive a car this exotic is a sizable privilege. But the thrill for me isn't the price or the rarity, it's the execution. Ferrari's most powerful ever engine, a naturally aspirated V12 unfettered by electricity, placed behind the driver and then surrounded by carbon and peerless electronics that feel totally natural and flatter the clumsy driver behind the wheel. It's about as exciting as it's possible for a car with a number plate to get. Ferrari can't really put a foot wrong at the moment, can it? Yes, admittedly, it's about to jump on the SUV bandwagon with the Purosangue SUV, which is going to reveal at the end of this year. Boo! But yeah, we'll reserve judgment on that one until we see it. But in the meantime, it's popping out special projects like this. The 296 GTB, after a bit of a fumble with the SF90, has pretty much perfected the whole hybrid supercar thing, and it's back to its winning ways in F1. It really is a company at the top of its powers. A bit like this car. Oh! Sorry, the speed limit. Naughty boy.